guys, just as a little check-in for everybody, what I'm asking you to do, if you have not yet, is to check in on our Canvas page. By show of hands, how many of you are feeling like pretty comfortable with Canvas? Excellent. All right, guys. One thing I am going to ask today, whenever we're going, obviously you're welcome to use your laptops, you're welcome to use any devices you like, but please have something on your desk to take notes. If it's your laptop or if it's a notebook, I'm giving you the PowerPoint slides, but I want you to feel comfortable also taking good notes on this. So what I'm asking you to do, guys, is to start reading chapter 1, because we're going to start covering it today, and to review the syllabus. Now, here's your good news for the day. We are on our second day of class, and I've already moved your homework assignments back from the 23rd to the 28th. Is that okay with you guys? I want you to put up your hands and go whoop whoop if you like having your assignments moved back. See, if you do that more often, I might move the assignments back more often. We're going to go over these assignments in class on Monday. That was a pretty weak whoop whoop, by the way. You guys can do better. So we're going to go over the assignments on Monday so you're feeling comfortable. Now on Friday, we're going to be doing our first hybrid high flex class. So you're not going to be reporting here on Friday. You're going to be coming online. There will be a link right on your Canvas page for Zoom. Keep in mind, we're going to try this. We're going to see what you guys think about it. If you like it, we're going to keep doing it. If you don't like it, we can always come to class because this room is ours. So we all good with that? Excellent. All right, guys, I always like jumping in with a little bit of current events. But show of hands here, who here has ever used Uber or Lyft? Well, somebody share with me, what has your experience been like? Did you have a good experience? Did anybody ever have a shady experience? Anybody ever have a strange experience in an Uber or Lyft? Tell me about it. Yeah, like some of those cars, you wonder what you're actually eating, right? Absolutely. It's true, you get a lot of folks who maybe are English as a second language. My best experience with an Uber driver, I was in San Francisco, and we were going to the Golden Gate Bridge. In the middle of the drive, the driver's phone died, so she no longer had GPS. So I had to GPS the route myself. Then she almost hit two homeless people, started clutching her chest, looked at the steering wheel and said, Jesus was looking out for us today. We ended up going the wrong way across the Golden Gate Bridge. Not the wrong way, the wrong lane, but she missed the exit. So I got billed for 2 tolls, too, after I had a navigator there. So the question is, who are these people who are driving for Uber and Lyft? Well, as it turns out, the government is asking the same question. Other than Lyft and Uber, what are the primary ways that people get around in big cities if they don't have cars? What else can they call them? Bus, taxi, all of these are licensed kinds of occupations. And so Uber and Lyft have been accused a lot of unfair types of competition. We're going to start out here with a little bit. Are you an independent contractor or are you an employee? Well, does anybody know what's the difference between those two? What are the differences between somebody who's an independent contractor and an employee? If you don't know, that's okay. Take a guess. Yes. So you're controlling how you do your job, essentially. They can be either, too. You can be a truck driver, can be an employee or a contractor, depending on the hire. Yeah, that's a good observation, isn't it? So you have to follow the policies and the way your employer says you do things. And I saw a hand over here, too. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Uber and Lyft for a little bit. What is your opinion? If we looked at this by those ideas, and we're getting into a little bit of labor and employment law here. This is not the context of today's lecture. We're doing this to talk about current events. But when it comes down to if you're driving for Uber or Lyft, what do you think? Are you setting your own rules or not? Yes?
Uber or Lyft making a policy like a screen in the car, like wearing a mask, their idea?
I noted that too, and I can't answer that question. I'd like to know that too. Yes? I think that's a really great argument too. Like, let's say, for example, if I were working for you, like let's say you wanted to put an addition onto your house and you hired me to come and do it, I could come and show up at a time we agreed upon, but I could ask you to pay me up front or I could ask you to pay me later. That would be up to what we negotiate, right? If you drive for Uber, how do you get paid? Yeah. They do, and they pay you through their app that goes to your bank account. Does a driver set the rates? No. Uber or Lyft set the rates. In terms of things like surge pricing, is that up to the driver or is that up to Uber or Lyft? You got it. So what the argument that the government is making here is these people really aren't contractors because they're not setting their own terms and conditions. They're employees. If you're Uber or Lyft, why do you not want these people to be employees? Why might you not? Yes? Bingo. You got to collect taxes off of them. You've got to pay into their Social Security. If they work certain amounts of hours based on a lot of other conditions, you might have to give them benefits. Guys, Uber and Lyft are companies that are making money based on operating just this far outside of the law. And I don't mean it's illegal. I mean it's law that we haven't figured out yet. We refer to this as the bleeding edge. So it's going to be interesting because California already made a similar decision to this. Uber themselves, Uber and Lyft, are trying to stay ahead of the game until they work out one final technology. What do they work on? You got it. They can eliminate the most expensive part of the equation, which is us. They can make more money. In any organization, the toughest part of the organization is almost always the human being. As we put the person between the keyboard and the monitor. That's the part that's complicated. This is also, by the way, this is a term I'd like you to remember. Somebody who works for Uber or Lyft, who works when they want to work. There's a term for this kind of economy. Does anybody know what it is? I'll give you a hint. It starts with a G. It's called the gig economy. And the reason it is, how many of you, by show of hands, have ever been to see a live music show? Been to a concert? Well, bands and performers call those gigs. It means you set up and you do the show and you move on. Well, gig economy means people are doing jobs they're getting paid for individually and working when they want to work. And this kind of stuff is going to be a bigger issue as we get further into the gig economy. Any questions or comments before we dive into today's material? I love bringing this kind of stuff up for conversation because 5 years ago, nobody knew who Uber was. And yes, sir. For example, and what I'm about to give you is generalities. There are more specific laws depending on the state you're in. Generally speaking, a lot of states have a rule that if you're working somebody 40 hours a week, they count as full-time. And in most places, based on things like the Affordable Care Act, if you're giving them 40 hours a week, you either have to pay benefits for them, medical benefits, retirement, or you have to pay a fine for not giving them benefits. And so the companies are saying, we can classify them as contractors instead of employees. We don't have to pay them. And here's the other trick.
That's what Lyft wants to do.
You got it. You got Uber and Lyft both want that. Guys, check this out. Yes, sir.
They also do like they're tricky into like getting a car, like you don't have a car, and then they'll take money out there too, like out of your pay.
Well, and by the way, what you're talking about is actually akin to something in the 1900s called the company store. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but what it comes into is basically companies kind of getting people into hawk, to the people who work for those companies into hawk for the companies they actually work for. Has anybody ever heard of the company store, by the way? Oh my goodness. You guys are in cold country here. This is the last story for the day before we get into today's material. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, if you worked for a coal mining industry in this area, you got paid not in U.S. dollars, you got paid in company script. So basically, imagine, for example, you worked at St. Francis, and they paid you money that was worthless outside of the campus because it wasn't government money. You could only shop at stores that were part of the company. He basically owned you. They would charge twice as much for a loaf of bread in company money, and if you tried to go to a store in the local town, they wouldn't accept the currency. It was a way to keep employees tied into their own companies. And this sort of stuff, some people argue, can be very similar when it goes wrong. That being said, a lot of people I know who drive for Uber and Lyft like the flexibility of making a few extra bucks. By the way, the highest Uber rates in the state of Pennsylvania are in a town not far from here. Where am I thinking about? You'd think, because there's not that many drivers. It's close to Altoona. Where is it? Nope. State College. State College has some of the highest Uber rates in the state of Pennsylvania because of all the demand, the per mile rate. So that's the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about, guys. That's what this class is all about. So let us get on. And did we start that video? We're going to make sure we do. Awesome. All right, guys. Let's get in for today. Guys, what we're going to be talking about, chapter 1, is really the basics of business. We're going to be talking about what the difference is between for-profit and non-profit companies. If you're into charities or into philanthropy, you might be into non-profits. If you're into making interesting products or services, you might be more into for-profits, and that's okay. We're also going to be talking about the environments of business, the things that affect how we do our jobs. Then we're going to be talking about the different kinds of economic systems. In the United States, we're a free market, and it's associated with a term that begins with a C. What is that term? We're capitalists here. We believe in a free market. But there are socialist economies, and there are communist economies. We're going to be talking about the differences and what works well and doesn't work well in all of these. We're going to be talking about how our economy is tied into things like unemployment. We went from a 4% unemployment rate at the beginning of March of this year. Right now, anybody know what our unemployment rate is? About 12 to 14, depending who measures it. So we're in a recession right now. Don't worry, we're going to get out. It's one of these things, these happen over time. We're also going to be talking about how the government manages money, and we're going to be talking about the idea of fiscal and monetary policy, and how markets are actually shaped. So there's a lot of subjects in this first one. And we're going to start off by talking about the very basics. We're going to be talking about the difference between revenue and profit, how we make things, what are the factors of production, and what entrepreneurs are all about. So, a business, guys, is basically anything that makes goods or services. If you can buy it in exchange for currency, you probably have a business. Now, in the United States, we used to be a very big industrial economy. We made lots of things. Guys, what is the nature of our economy right now? What's the biggest section of our economy right now? Yeah, technology, services, all these sorts of things. And by the way, although we all associate manufacturing of things like iPhones with places like China and Taiwan, most of the intellectual property, we still lead the world in terms of intellectual property involving technology. Well, good is something we can buy. I can buy this coffee cup. I can touch it. Services, that's the largest part of the economy. Guess what? I work in the service industry. I provide a service. I'm an educator. If you're a nurse, you work in the service industry. If you work in retail, you work in durable goods and services. But the lines are getting blurrier all the time. And we're going to do our first experiment with a little poll this morning. And it didn't work on Monday because I had to fix a couple of things. It should work. I'm asking you to go to this web address on your mobile device or your laptop. It's pollev.com/KentTompkins063. Does Apple sell goods, services, or both? Actually, we'll see if my poll works too. It's up on the top. pollev.com/KentTompkins063. My mom cursed me with a first name that ends with the same letter my last name begins with. It's working. That's fantastic. I'm already having a better. Let's see. A lot of people picking good answers here. We'll see how it stacks up. All right, let's talk about this, guys. We know for sure that Apple sells goods. What's something that Apple sells? iPads, iPhones, MacBooks, everything. Mac is a very, very big company for durable goods. One of the most profitable in the world. They're sitting on such a large pile of cash, it's unbelievable. But Apple also sells services. What kind of services does Apple sell? Yeah, absolutely. If you go to the Apple Store, they'll gladly fix it to try to sell you a new one. Sure. So they also sell something like cloud backup. They also sell software. Yes, sir. Yeah, and it's all going to the cloud. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, and by the way, that's a big deal. Absolutely. In fact, in the United States, when I say this, I know there are a lot of people who are very passionate about physical cash, and I appreciate that. But in the United States, your generation is more and more frequently paying with things that are not cash. How many of you would say that you do more of your transactions electronically than via cash? And so that's a start up in this country. In fact, if you go to places like China, cash is becoming even more uncommon. So Apple sells both. If you think about the biggest companies in the world, let me name one for you guys. What does Google sell? Exactly. Guys, what do you pay for your Gmail account? Nothing. What do you pay for using Google Maps? Nothing. What they're getting from you is information. Google's #1 source of revenue. Can anybody guess how they make money? Boom. Search engine advertising, even after 15 years of Google existing, is still the #1 source of revenue. Yes, sir. Absolutely correct. If you want to know how people are making careers off of YouTube, that's how. By the way, here, anybody here ever have a viral video? Did you? What happened? Tell me about your video. How many hits did you get? Dude, that's amazing. Who else had one? What was your viral video? Oh, goodness, that's fantastic. Were you monetizing that too? That's fantastic. My wife actually had a viral video. She filmed an Airedale dog in somebody's car that had laid on the horn because it wanted its papa to come out of the store. All I'm going to say is that she paid for a couple of Christmases with the royalties she got off that. My wife is a registered nurse. She is not a tech guru. She was in the right place at the right time. But the point is that these days, these lines are getting blurrier all the time in terms of how we make money. Now, we know for profit, for example, Lenovo makes products they sell on a profit. Apple makes products they sell on a profit. Ford Motor Company makes cars that hopefully sell for not a profit. Well, there are companies who exist not to make a profit. These are what we refer to as non-profit organizations. You guys right now are standing in them. St. Francis University is a 501c3, which means we don't pay taxes. That's our biggest benefit. We don't pay taxes because our mission isn't to make money, it's to educate people and to improve our community. So if you enjoy working with people, if you enjoy trying to make the world a better place, and there's nothing wrong with either, by the way. There's nothing wrong with working for a for-profit company or charity. But what might be different in terms of working for a nonprofit versus working for a for-profit? Who said that? That's great. It's absolutely true. Less money for sure. If you work for a nonprofit, if you're an accountant, you can get a job at either because nonprofit companies need accountants. But you're not going to make as much money as if you're working for a for-profit company. You're not going to have big budgets. For example, a recent St. Francis grad, how many of you have ever heard of the brand Casper that makes mattresses that deliver to your house? Have you guys heard of this brand? It was a big tech startup, and it was doing really well. Her marketing budget for that company, when she was director of marketing, and keep in mind, she'd been out of school for 3 years. Her monthly marketing budget was $1 million. Crazy. If you get to a nonprofit group, a small nonprofit, their marketing budget may be this much, which means you have to figure out ways to get your company name out there with no money at all. So there are differences. Now, speaking of differences, because we're talking about for-profit and nonprofit, who here can tell me what the difference is? Yes?
So revenue's like the money that you make from like selling something. The profit's like the money that you make after you pay everything off.
Exactly right. So let's say, for example, we have this really great company. We have this great idea. We're going to call it Amazon.com, and we're going to sell everything. We want to be the world's marketplace. We want to sell stuff to everybody. Well, for the first 15 years Amazon was around, they were dominating. They got their name out there. They were not making a profit. They were operating at a loss for about the first 12 to 15 years. So how did they survive? Why did Amazon, could you think about this? Could you think of a single company at a local level that could survive for 15 years without making a profit? What happened? No. What do you think, guys? Why did they stick around? He was, but not rich enough to keep that going. And this is something we're going to talk about in another chapter. They were lucky enough to have stakeholders who thought, This company is going to go places. We just have to wait it out. And so when they were a publicly traded company, yes.
Same thing happened with Tesla.
Exactly. Tesla has very seldom been profitable. Let's talk about some other companies that you may have heard of that have never been profitable. How about Uber? Uber has never turned a profit. Yes. SpaceX. Yeah, they have struggled to be profitable as well. Did you watch the launch this summer? How many of you watched that landing? That to me was like, I can't believe that wasn't a bigger thing on the news. That was like the biggest thing ever. That vertical landing, amazing. But if you have a good enough idea, and you have investors who are willing to stand behind you, you can be a for-profit company that does not turn a profit but stick around. The point is, people believed in Amazon because they were dominated, and it paid off. In the Christmas season of 2019, now, the holiday season is the biggest shopping time of the year. Out of every $10 spent in the United States on the internet during the holiday season, how many dollars went to Amazon? It's not quite that high yet, but it's about 4.5. Would you want to get into a business where one company, one of your competitors, gets almost half of all the profit? You would? Would you get into a business where you have that level of competition? Well, somebody is, because we need that kind of competition. Tell me why you jump in. I couldn't even imagine these days if Amazon disappeared tomorrow. Imagine where we try getting all of our stuff. Now, that's not to say companies aren't trying to compete. If we get into companies like Nike, for example, how many of you have ever bought a custom pair of Nikes? Or a custom pair of Chucks? I love it. You can wear it, you have your shoes in 3 weeks. Well, Nike is starting to divorce themselves from Amazon because they're starting to say, if Amazon can do e-commerce, why can't we sell ourselves? Which means Amazon's going to have to adjust their business model too. Yes, sir.
I think Amazon also help other companies think better ideas too. Like far as like the things what they do, so they help other companies. So when companies see that Amazon growing things like that, they kind of they boom. So I think.
By the way, man, that's an excellent point. And right now, you just nailed the whole reason why competition makes companies better. If Amazon comes up with a good idea, you've got to compete with them. Yes, sir.
Question. How is Amazon like technically profitable? How are they not?
That's a great question. I mean, when we get down to, when I give you this answer, keep in mind it's going to be a very simplified answer for the sake of time. How we determine whether or not something is a monopoly is really the question. You know, for example, could you argue that other companies are still able to sell goods and services over the internet? They are. What's Amazon's big competitive advantages? For sure. Student discounts. And it's funny, if you do a little research, in fact, we're going to be showing a video about how Amazon actually works sometime this semester. Amazon actually monitors their pricing on products like hundreds of times a day. And so, for example, if you see, hey, wow, this one pair of shoes I really wanted, and they're down $12 today, you look at them and you don't buy them. They're monitoring your habit. So tomorrow, the shoes went down to $11 more, or $11 more than they were the day before. They went down $11 more. You still didn't buy. That pair of shoes may jump up $10 the next day to say, well, if this person isn't buying at the low point, we're going to put the pressure on them to say, if you don't buy them soon, the price is going to be back where it was. So their algorithms, like, insanely tied in. Yes.
And that's what I mean by like other companies. Like when I'm doing something online, so other companies taking out things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if you look at Amazon as a whole, why, to stick with your point about Amazon being a monopoly, where has Amazon decided that they're going to start expanding now? They just buy Whole Foods and make it control them now. But let's think about one other thing. Talk about customers. Okay? From the time I pick something out online till I hit click, till I buy it, how does it get to my house? Yep, they're looking at controlling their own distribution. In the previous days of e-commerce, you still relied on FedEx. You still relied on the United States Postal Service. You still relied on UPS. Yes, sir.
When did they start to
They started about 3 years ago. Now they're still using the other methods too because their vans aren't everywhere. But they're really literally going to control the entire process from order to delivery within probably the next 5 years.
So Amazon didn't always have these names that would grow out.
Those are about the last 3 to 4 years. So we'll go back to you. They're already doing it. They're not there yet, but they will be because they're going to. Yeah. If you can do it better, faster, cheaper, the world will be after your door. Yes, sir. They're actually, in fact, I'll show you a video on that too. They're getting like full helicopter-sized drones now. They can deliver things the size of refrigerators. So literally. Now we're a little off topic, but that's okay. That's what this class is about. Yes. Let's think about it for a second. Let's say Amazon nails it, and all of a sudden we've got completely automated delivery. Who is that good for? Exactly right. It's great for the company. I don't have to hire people anymore. I can buy these drones that can literally work day after day without a break, without health care, without dental, without any of it. Who's the bad guy? Employees. The people are basically saying, for example, well, I drive for a living. Well, we don't need you anymore. We've got automated cars. Here's the way Amazon's also handling it. They actually have their own health care. They are insuring their own employees now. So you're literally getting health care via video on the job. I had a former student who worked for Amazon. Now keep in mind, this student was military before she got her master's degree here. She was a captain in the Army. This is no wimp. She was a very tough person. She went to work for Amazon, and she said the average she walked was over 30 miles a day at the warehouse. And they actually have a thing at their distribution centers. They will take a picture of you on your first day, and 6 months later, they'll take another picture of you to show you how much weight you've lost from moving around so much. It's really a tough job, and if you don't have the hustle, they get rid of you quickly. So it is definitely a high-demand company, and the likes of which the world has never really quite seen. When I say this is not a denouncement of just Jeff Bezos or Amazon. I order stuff on Amazon all the time. But it's saying we should be aware of how these companies operate. The ethical part of it is something we should talk about. We should also know if we want to be in business, where are our niches? Where can we compete? Where can we take on the Goliaths like Amazon so that we have a place in the market? You guys are asking excellent questions, guys. When we covered revenue, profit, and loss, that feels pretty good. We're going to talk about the post-it note in just a minute, but I've been going hard and fast here for longer than I probably thought I would this morning. So I'm going to stop and open it up for our first break, and that is an opportunity for anybody in the room to ask a question about anything. Question or comment. In fact, when we open this up too, when the campus starts coming alive with events, if you want to even promote an event that you're doing on campus, you can do that too. Any questions or comments so far? Sir?
How did Amazon even start? How did they get to the point
Jeff Bezos came up with this idea. His whole concept in the 90s was to sell books. I mean, back in the 90s, people didn't really have e-readers. And in fact, about 1995 is when most people started getting computers at home. A lot of people didn't have computers before that. And the reason being is we didn't have the internet. The internet wasn't in people's homes commonly till the mid to late 90s. And he had this idea that, well, instead of having to go to a bookstore, wouldn't it be great if we had every book you could possibly think about online, and we could buy them online? And that was really how he started the company. His family was wealthy, but he was able to borrow some money to create a startup. Now check this out. You know how with Amazon you can go and you do one-click purchasing? You know, you've got set up, I click, it automatically gets shipped to me. He patented that in 1997. And from 1997 till 2017, if your company wanted to be able to sell stuff on the internet with one-click purchasing, you had to pay him a royalty. That's crazy.
What did you say before?
This was 1997. He patented one-click purchasing. And here's what the other thing that showed. Nobody knew anything about the internet at that point in time. How would you like to have been that guy? By the way, you want to know about another big mistake in the world of business during about that era? Who do you guys, actually let me rephrase the question. By show of hands, how many of you, if you need to find something on the internet, use Google? Yeah, almost all of us do. Yahoo had the chance to buy Google in the early 2000s for about $3 billion, and they said it was too expensive and they passed on it. How would you like to be the person who made that decision? So people make bad decisions all the time. Imagine that. I mean, when you think about these companies together, I don't know that in the history of humankind, and this is my opinion, you guys can feel differently. I think that Google and Amazon are probably the two most powerful companies that we've seen in the history of business. And in terms of, that's good, bad, and all over, and it's something for us to learn from. But those are people who really were able to see the future. Speaking of seeing the future, this is a little less high-tech example. Does anybody know the story of the Post-it note? Does anybody know how the Post-it note got created? I'm sorry? Do you have any idea how the Post-it note got created? We're going to show you how an accident in business can turn into big business too. And I apologize, this video is a little cartoony. Originally created the adhesive, was trying to work on an adhesive that would be incredibly powerful, and it was failed. It didn't work well. And so he was wondering what he could even do with this mistaken product. It was the early 70s, and all of a sudden you see these people come up with an idea. In 3M's offices, people were hanging them around the office for years before somebody said, we could sell this. The Post-it note didn't hit markets until the early 1980s. And to this point in time, it's one of 3M's still top sellers to this day. So mistakes can turn into big money if you know what you're doing. Anybody know how the potato chip was invented? Early 1900s, a guy was in a restaurant in New York City and asked for fried potatoes and kept sending them back because the potatoes weren't crispy enough for him. So the chef got really ticked off and basically threw them into a vat of oil and sent him this burnt pile of potatoes, and the customer loved them. It happened because somebody was being a smart aleck. So you never know when a business opportunity is going to come up. And so whether you're Jeff Bezos or whether you're Spencer Silver, some things just come up as great ideas that reveal themselves. Guys, we start talking about business too because we're going to be getting into entrepreneurship. We're in an era of technology and innovation. Some businesses seem to always succeed, and some businesses hardly ever succeed. Who here can tell me a business they think would be a sure thing, something that if you open it would probably succeed? If the technology is right, if it's filling a need, tech for sure, but there's risk involved for sure, yes. Yeah, if you're listening to the market, where is there a gap? Where is something that people want that doesn't exist? That's why Uber, by the way, and Lyft took off, because taxi service was terrible. Yes.
Sanitizer, tissues, paper towels, toilet paper, anything like that, just based on the time we're in, all the sales are skyrocketing. You go in and look for hand sanitizer, it's like there we go.
Look up to the Target share price in any grocery store chain. They're all doing well because of the times. There are certain things people always need. We always need food. We always need electricity. We always need internet these days. Some things don't succeed. Like, for example, there's a lot of car companies that have tried to start and compete with the big three. It's tough to compete with well-established companies. It's tough to compete with restaurant chains. Let's say, for example, by show of hands here, if I had a bus and a bunch of money in my pocket and said, hey guys, we're all going to Chick-fil-A for lunch, how many of you would join me? Yeah, a lot of us love Chick-fil-A. All right, let's say the same thing. I got a pocket full of money and we're going down the street to Tonkin's Chicken Joint. Probably not as many, right? So brand name recognition makes things a sure thing as well. My chicken's really good. My wife makes it. It's wonderful. But guys, when you think about risk versus reward, generally speaking, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. And people who have high tolerances for risk tend to see big payoffs in the long run. What would you do? That depends on a lot of things, including your tolerance for risk. So guys, we're going to cover the 5 factors of production very quickly before we end it for today. I'm going to end about 9:45 today, so give me some time to clean the room. But guys, the 5 factors for production are as follows. Do you have a place to build? Do you have things to build with? Do you have land and natural resources? We are really lucky in this country, guys. We have got a big country with lots of raw materials, a skilled workforce. Yes, sir. Oh, that's a big question. Let me get through these 5, and I'm going to give you an answer to that question, because it's a big question, and it's one that you should be asking. But it's a great question. But we do have lots of land and natural resources. Guys, check this out.
I'm just thinking, like, we got, the Amazon guy got a lot of money. And he over like a ton of money. What's his rate?
I know, but I'm saying that we can't pay them back.
You know what?
I'm not understanding that because we got a lot of things that we
It's because we also borrow a lot of resources.
You guys are asking a great question, and we're going to stop and we're going to answer it because it's important.
Yeah, but that's probably what you're saying. But like, it's like this that the U.S. got is making a lot of money. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're making so much money. Like, how can we not pay them back?
Well, you're asking a good question, and here's the way it works. Every year, when the government, between Congress and the president, come up with a budget. Now, when I say this is not an indictment of any president or any political party. I'm just telling you guys how it works. We have not had a balanced budget in this country since 2001. Our last time that we had all our bills paid was 2001. Here's why. When the government spends money that they don't have, it's equivalent to what we do with credit cards. Yes? You nailed it. That's what started our slide into deep debt. All of a sudden, we had this attack in 2001. We started accumulating debt because we didn't have the money to pay for the bills.
You say what you just said about the government's money?
Look, absolutely. The way government spends money, if you have a budget that's more than the money you have in the bank, you have to find a way to pay for it. You and I use credit cards or loans. The thing is, you got to pay this back. You got to pay them back with interest. Yes.
Isn't another reason why we're so in debt is because our government has to pay for all of our businesses that don't have enough money to get.
You guys are asking really good questions. And this is, I'm going to give you a simplified answer.
When companies like just go out and they can't keep going.
Well, generally speaking, when a company can't operate anymore, when they're for profit, they go bankrupt. And yeah, the government sometimes is on the hook for some of their expenses, as are the people who got wronged by them. For example, if my company shut down and I owed you money, somebody's going to try to make you whole. But what happens, again, the point about 9/11 is correct. We started back in 2001 having to finance a couple of wars. Nobody wants to raise taxes. You know, for example, if you want to get elected, nobody gets elected by saying, if you elect me, I'm going to raise all your taxes 10%. Nobody wants to hear that. But when you cut taxes and you don't cut spending, you accumulate debt. And our number, in fact, we'll cover this in the next class, but I'm going to show you who our top debt holders are. And how do we finance that debt? We sell bonds. And so there are foreign countries that own large shares of the United States bond market because they lent us money. In fact, the $1,200 checks that we all got this year, people who were working, were debt financed, just like they were debt financed in 2008 when we entered a recession. So it's not really a political issue because Republicans and Democrats both do it. So, did I answer your questions, guys? All right. By the way, can I give you guys a thank you? You guys, it's the second day of class, and you're asking excellent questions. I will always favor conversation over lecture. Keep it coming, guys. Have a great day.
Will we start that?